Good morning. Tuesday. Boy, I tell you what, January is weird this year. Last week, Tuesday, we're talking negative 10-degree weather up here in Gaylord. This week, Tuesday, I'm looking at 50-degree weather today. Nuts. It's been a weird winter. Well, good morning. It might not be morning if you're watching at night, but it's morning for me on Tuesday. I think it's the 29th of January. In thinking and preparing for what to talk about this morning, a story came to mind that has really impacted me throughout my life growing up and personally. I thought was kind of, those moments in life where God just gives you the right thing to say, but it also impacts you as a person. So if you'll allow me to share a quick personal story, I'd love to share this with you. So I used to work for an organization called Youth for Christ. Youth for Christ does these programs called Campus Life in the high schools. And so my friend and I, we directed a junior high Campus Life program. And so we would hang out with junior high students. The whole goal was to connect with students that didn't necessarily go to youth group, right? So it was a public school outreach. One of the students, and definitely, not that you have favorites, but definitely one of the students we bonded with most and who gravitated towards this club most was a kid named Big John, or I called him Big John. Big John was about 4'8", maybe 4'7". He was the smallest kid in the school. So if you get this picture of this little guy, very small, but full of life, full of excitement, always coming up to you, always excited. Everybody loved Big John. The thing I like most about Big John is his raw honesty. John would often talk to me about his life, the things he was going through, things that were either struggles at home. But I don't know if you feel this way, but when I started getting older, I realized life became less authentic. And hanging out with kids, especially, helps bring that authenticity back. Good or bad, students and kids are typically very honest, and I love that about John. So one day he called me, and I don't remember whether he was in 8th or 9th grade. We were helping out senior high at that time as well. But John and I would often hang out. I don't remember. I don't think he had. I'm sure he had a dad, but his dad was non-existent. So our kind of the campus life crew that we had of guys, a bunch of college students, we kind of served as father or big brother type figures to these kids. Well, John was no exception. He called me up one day, and he said, "Drew, listen. I've got this thing I really want to tell you, but I'm worried about telling you." I said, "Yeah, John, go ahead, man. You can tell me anything." It's like, okay. All right, so my friends and I, we tried pot. And I kind of listened. He had called me on the phone, so I was listening on the phone. I didn't say anything. He said, "And when we tried it, it really wasn't that big of a deal." And I just kept listening. I said, "Okay." He said, "So we were safe, we didn't do anything afterwards, we weren't stupid with it, and Drew, it wasn't a big deal and it felt really good. I just don't see what the big deal with it is." I said, "Oh." I said, "Okay, John. Yeah, no big deal at all, man." He's like, "So I can do it?" Well, I'm like, "Sure. Of course you can smoke pot. You just did." Yeah, of course, yeah, you can do that. He's like, "It's no big deal, right?" I said, No, actually not a big deal at all. Actually, it really isn't a big deal. And over the phone, you can almost sense somebody's facial expressions when you're talking to them. And I could just picture him, like his jaw dropping and completely thinking I was going to say something else. And I don't know where God gave me these words. I don't know how exactly it came about because I haven't thought about it ever like this before. But as John was getting very excited about his newfound no big deal pot smoking, I said, "Hey, John, before we get done talking, though, I did want to bring something up." He says, "Yeah, Drew." I said, "Well, the whole pot smoking thing," I said, it really isn't a big deal." I said, "But here's the only problem I have with it. I don't believe you want your life not be a big deal. I said, John, my problem is I want to be a big deal. I want to have significance. And see, when you smoke pot or participate and take part in the things this world tells you is really, really exciting, is going to bring you significance, when you do that, welcome to the club, man. You've just become a number. You're not a big deal anymore. You've just fallen into the trap evil has set up to completely take away any of the power God's followers have. You see, this lesson that I got the privilege of sharing with Big John really translated in my life. You see, just because I don't smoke pot doesn't mean that I always take life as importantly as I ought to. That I don't get distracted by evil. You see, oftentimes we think evil isn't around us because we can't necessarily see it. But it's sneaky, you know? It disguises itself and it numbs us. Even if we're Christians. You see, the greatest threat there is to evil is a Christian who's fully alive, who is engaged in reality, and who understands that God is real. Changes everything. It no longer becomes about sin management. And our relationship with God doesn't become anymore about, oh, do I do the right thing or I don't? When John thinks, everybody tells me I can't smoke pot. Well, obviously he did, so he did it. Every adult told him, no, you can't do that. Well, yeah, he can. He could. He did. And you know what? It's going to turn him completely insignificant. That was a very big lesson for John that day. But just as big of a lesson for me. My significance comes when I acknowledge the reality of God's divinity. When I'm living in that significance, everything matters. Everything's a big deal because everything's real.